You're listening to Halfway There, episode number 169, Cody, Dakota, Wooten, and Listening and Leading. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Halfway There. This is the show where we have honest conversations with ordinary Christians about today's Christian experience. I, as always, am your host, Eric Nevins, and I am so grateful that you are here. Friends, just a couple things I wanted to share with you before we get into this episode. It's a really good one. It's kind of long, so I'm going to make all of this very brief. First of all, last week we had our guest, Sarah Geringer. I hope that you enjoyed her ideas on transforming your thought life. I know I did. In fact, we did an extra bonus conversation with Sarah about dealing with divorce at the holidays. If you remember, she mentioned that, dealing with divorce as a child of divorce herself, and that also is a category, of course, that I fit into. And so that really intrigued me, and I wanted to do an additional conversation. That's over at Patreon. You can get access to it by just donating. If it's as little as $5 a month. Would love to have you on board and have you get those extra conversations that I create every single month for you. So this month it's me and Sarah talking about how to deal with divorce at the holidays. There's a lot of us who go through that. And so she gives us some really great strategies, including a really intriguing Bible story that she relates to the situation of having had a divorce in the family that I thought was really kind of genius. So I hope that you'll check that out. You can go to the show notes and hit Patreon, or you can just go to patreon.com/halfway there if you are interested in doing that. It's the season of giving. I thought maybe I'd mention that to you. Number two, there's something else that I'm up to that I think you might want to be a part of. My friend Steve Olsher, who we talk about in this episode, is starting Podcast Magazine. And a few months ago, or a month or so ago, he was looking for category directors for each category. And I volunteered to be the category director of the religion and spirituality section of the magazine, which is really, really cool. Going to be very fun. And I can't quite wait to take that on. It's going to be writing some articles and finding and discovering podcasts, which is something I really love to do. But here's the good thing for you. You can actually get a free lifetime subscription to Podcast Magazine right now. I don't know how long this is going to go on, but that's what he's doing right now. So you can go to podcastmagazine.com, or I'll have a link in the show notes that you can click over to there as well. If you use that, it'll track it, and I would appreciate that. But either way, whatever would be great. And it'd be wonderful if you just hop on and get it. And then you'll be able to see what I'm writing. You'll be able to see different things. Here's the thing. It's going to be for the religion and spirituality category, not the Christianity category. So we're going to do some things like feature, Buddhist podcasts and Islamic podcasts and all the other kinds of categories that go in there. I'm not opposed to that, but it'll be a little bit different, just so that you know. Or a little bit broader is like maybe the better way to put it. But so that's happening. That's a thing. So go again, podcastmagazine.com, get your free lifetime subscription. You can do that right now, especially if you're interested in podcasts. You totally want to do that. Okay, so let's talk about our conversation here. There's a couple things that you're going to notice. The first one is that my guest and I today, we talk about how hot it is in Colorado. And this episode is coming out the second week of December in 2019. You may be listening to it at who knows, some other time. But that's when it's being first released, and we recorded it way back in July. So Cody, I know you listen. You'll probably listen to this. I'm sorry it took so long. We had a huge backlog there starting back in the summer, and we're getting them published. So I am excited to be sharing this episode with you, or with Cody. Cody's a faithful listener. He's a great friend. And I really do appreciate him and his story. So that's really the only thing I wanted to point out to you. Cody has a great heart and passion for other people. I think that'll come out, and I think you'll enjoy it. So our guest is Cody Dakota Wooten, and he's a coach. He is an author, a teacher, a speaker. He's got this passion for leadership. Listen to the end. You'll hear how he came up with that and why he's so passionate about leadership in his generation. He's a little younger. We even meander through Tinder and some things like that, which at least we laughed a lot. That's the second thing you'll notice is we really laughed a lot. We had a lot of fun. So I hope you enjoyed. Cody, welcome to Halfway There.
Thank you, Eric. I'm super excited to be here, and I'm honored to be on your podcast. And just so you know, there's only a couple podcasts that I listen to on a very regular basis, and your show is one of them. So thank you for everything that you do.
Well, that's super kind, and you're always kind enough to comment or share or do things like that. I appreciate it. So thank you for listening. That's cool, but it's also great to just have you here on the show.
Absolutely.
We met, so I always like to throw this out there for our friends. We met at New Media Summit with Steve Olsher, the man, the myth, the legend, we'll call him, Mr. Bold. So anyway, he's that's where we met. That whole conference is a great thing, guys. If you are a coach or an author, or looking to get your message out, you should go check that out. I can always connect you to that as well. All right, Cody. So I want to hear about you. So tell us a little bit about who you are and where you are right now.
So who I am, where I am right now, honestly, I'm a regular guy that sees the world as it is and hopes to make an impact in the world. That's really what it is. Christian at heart and hoping to do God's work, however he's calling me to do it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. How are you pursuing that right now?
Definitely. So I call myself a heroic potential and legendary leadership coach, which basically means that I see people in the world who have gifts, who have talents, who have amazing things to contribute in the world, who aren't doing it or who aren't doing it to the capacity that they're able to do it. And so I go in with them and help them figure out how can they live up to what I call the heroic potential. Basically, the Greek word for hero meant someone with the strength for two or more people. And so understanding what is that ability, what is that talent that you have that you can bring out to help other people in the world, how do we reach that highest potential you have within that? And as you do this more and more, and as you create other leaders around you, you become what I call the legendary leader, which I think is the ultimate goal for basically everyone in life to be able to accomplish, is to reach that status of legendary leadership.
Yeah, and I think even, you talk about as you're raising up other leaders, I mean, this is exactly what Jesus did, right? He was there, he developed and he learned with the Lord, and then he started to bring people around him to teach them so that they could go out with a goal, knowing that someday he was going to leave and he was going to send them into the world.
Created more legendary leaders. That's the other thing, right? We think about Jesus as the ultimate leader because he was, but after him, when he went on, he left behind other people who were absolutely legendary leaders. I mean, Peter, Paul, like so many great, amazing leaders that were created from his legacy.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't know the exact number, so maybe I shouldn't say this, but it's interesting to think about how many generations of Christians, right? If you think even if it's, let's say, 40 years between generations, it's not actually that many generations back toward, to the apostles, right? And so there you can go through church history. I've been listening to this podcast called Orthodoxy and Heterodoxy by a Orthodox priest, which is kind of interesting.
Okay.
Going through church history and just, as he goes through it, and there's all these people who that legacy, I think you can arguably trace back to Jesus and to the apostles.
Definitely. Yeah. And some people may not know how their personal legacy works within that, but I mean, that is how our faith has maintained itself. It's been one person who stood up as a legendary leader, passed it on to the next person, to the next person, to the next person, until here we are today, where Christianity is one of the most prolific religions in the world.
Yeah, so we've got that sort of idea of multiplication going here. I love that. So, all right, let's talk about you. I want to talk about how you got here. So I know that you grew up in Colorado.
Yes, born and raised. Love Colorado. Which is
that's we connected over that because that's where I am now in the Rocky Mountains. We're having that 2 weeks a year where it's like unbelievably hot. That's happening right now. So
yes, it's like the rest of the year, it's like mild. Things are great, and you just that 2 weeks you get hit with it, and you're like, oh my gosh, what is this?
It's terrible. But we don't tell people from California that most of the time it's really good. We just tell them it's too hot because we don't want them to come here. Just kidding. If you're a listener in California. Don't want to offend too much. Anyway, but yeah, so that's kind of what we're doing right now. But Colorado is a great place to be. I know you grew up here. I know that you grew up with you said 3 women in your house, right?
Yeah, so I was raised by 3 women. So I was raised by my mother, my grandmother, and my aunt. And basically, how that came about is my mother made an interesting discovery that my father was married to another woman at the same time as her. And so, so that's obviously an interesting dilemma to be in.
I think that's called a game changer.
Yeah, you could call it a game changer. And so after that, my mother got full custody of me. But my father, he had the ability to be a part of my life. He was allowed complete visitation anytime he wanted. And he chose not to be a part of my life. And so basically, my mother, my grandmother, and my aunt raised me. That was how I was raised.
Yeah. Okay. So that has some implications for you. I'm guessing, right? Because anytime somebody's like, "Hey, okay, I'm not going to be there." What did you do with that?
Like you grow up and you see all these other kids that you're growing up around who have their fathers, and they're even to this day I can admit it that there's a hole in me that that father figure should be a part of, and they're not there. And you see everyone else who has this in their life. You see people who have 2 parents, and you're just like, why don't I have that? And like it's not even like you did something wrong, right? It's just like it is what it is, and there's sadly just not much you can do about it.
Yeah, I get that. So that obviously is hard as a kid. You don't understand it as a kid for sure.
Definitely not.
Right. You just kind of is what it is. And then later you grow up and go, oh, that explains some things. Right. So what was the spiritual climate like as a child then? So you obviously have a little bit of turmoil going on, but were you always in a Christian family or what was happening?
So my mother, her parents were 2 different denominations. My grandmother was Catholic, and my grandfather, he was, I think, Lutheran, whichever one doesn't believe in birthdays.
Oh no, that's not Lutheran. That's it's like Jehovah's Witness. I think they do.
Jehovah's Witness. Yeah. Yes, he was Jehovah's Witness. So sorry, Lutherans. I'm not a master of different denominations. That's not my specialty.
Hey, listen, I have a master divinity. I'll handle the denominations. You just let me know if you need.
Boom. So yeah. So my grandmother was Catholic. My grandfather, he was Jehovah's Witness. So they're like completely different atmospheres.
Totally.
And my mother grew up like halfway in between each, and she was like, "This is nonsense." So basically, when I kind of got like 9-10 years old around, she said like, I'm gonna let you decide what you want to be, because I was kind of forced between 2 different things, and that left a bad taste in her mouth. So she basically said, whatever types of churches you want to go to, I'll take you there. If you want to explore like Buddhism and Hinduism, like you can explore that if you want to. I'll give you that ability to kind of create that, like, what is your own belief, which I think was really a blessing, because for me, I don't have a lot of like negative biases towards most faiths. especially in the Christian world. Something that you hear a lot of within the Christian world is like, oh, this denomination over here is wrong because of this, and oh, that denomination is wrong because, you know, this is their history and whatnot. And I never really had that. I kind of was able to just see like, what is there within the Christian faith? And for me, I kind of always felt more compelled towards Christianity. I didn't really feel a compulsion to any other faith. Around that time, I made a decision to stick with a non-denominational Christian church. Maybe not for the best of reasons. I was a kid, and
Sure.
they had donuts and video games before the mass. So I was like, hey, that's a winner in my book.
So that was fun, right? That's why you make decisions as a child. I get that. But still, that's a big responsibility. I'm interested in that, you know, for your mom to just give you, right? Hey, you can go ahead and you decide for yourself at 10 years old. I mean, I have a 10-year-old right now. I can't imagine the way, of course he would make a decision like that. Like, well, you know what? They got donuts here and I'm cool with that. Like that makes sense. I mean, however old you were, but it's kind of a big responsibility. How did you handle it? Maybe you never thought of it that way.
Like, I never really thought about it. No, it was just kind of like for me, it was like there's got to be a truth out there, and there's got to be something that connects me to that truth. And if I can feel a connection, there's got to be something like speaking to me. Another thing that like I've heard a lot on your podcast is like people think that like God can't speak to you, and that was like that notion never crossed my mind. Like I had heard stories in the Bible when I was young, and so like God speaking to you didn't seem like this like crazy out there, like he doesn't do that anymore. Like that just was something he did in my world. And so I guess I kind of had that idea that he would speak to me somehow. And I wouldn't necessarily know exactly what it was, but there would be something there that would say, like, this is God talking, knock, knock.
Yeah. Hello. I love that. You know what's so great about that is I just reading the Bible. Of course, I expected that God would speak to me, right? I love that.
Somehow, and like different people heard God differently, right?
Yep.
Like some people heard it through another person. Some people had God speak to them directly. Some people heard God through dreams, and it's like these are so like to me, I like was like God speaks to people. I just don't know how he's going to speak to me specifically.
Yeah, totally interesting. I love that. I just love that. If you just read the Bible, that's how it's going to go. Like you that's what you expect because that's what happens.
That's just what he does.
People have a mystical experience, and you have to get to some theology later in order to not believe it, which I don't believe or buy anymore. So that's interesting. I get myself in a little bit of trouble.
For me, like theology, like I didn't really get a strong theological understanding until college. And so like basically up until college, I didn't really have the notion that like there's these huge differences from one Bible tradition to another Bible tradition. Like that just wasn't apparent to me until I went to college.
Yeah. That's pretty interesting because why would you, right? So, yeah. Okay, so you're going to this non-denominational church and you said, well, maybe it wasn't the best of reasons, but was there like, how did that shape you and how did it kind of, how did you learn and grow in that? And I'm really curious too, when and if you made like a personal decision, not that you have to necessarily, but like what that was like for you.
Yeah. So I would go about this in two ways. One is it was probably about the time, maybe like 11, 12 years old, maybe around there. I made a decision to get baptized. And so like that was a personal decision. Mm-hmm. And it came pretty soon after, like I did a summer camp of sorts. It was like it wasn't a very long one, but I just remember it was just super powerful, experience being there. I remember one of the nights, it was like a worship night. So you had the band on stage and people in the audience. And I just remembered like feeling this like need to bow down, like get on my knees, bow down, and just release it all to God. It was like my body was telling me that's what I needed to do. And it's one of the most powerful religious experiences that I remember in my life, because it wasn't like a logical thing. It wasn't like this is how we do it.
Right.
It was just like, just do it.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's so important. And it's interesting because it doesn't sound like it was really an emotional decision either. Sometimes people get worried about that, but it was just
it was like a compulsion, like something outside of you is telling you move in this way.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a voice like for me personally, I've never heard the voice of God. Like some people say like he spoke to me in clear words. Like that's never happened for me.
Yeah.
I've never had like dreams that were from God. Like that's never happened to me. Now, I personally believe that can happen to people. It just hasn't happened to me. That's just not how he speaks to me.
Right. But you felt like he was leading you to just give your life to him right there. Yeah.
Exactly.
Very cool.
So pretty soon after that, I did get baptized, but then adolescence happens and growing up, and there's definitely one of the things that I strongly believe in the Christian faith is that it's not like one and done, like I'm baptized, ergo everything is good forever. I think there's like phases where like you're going to have good, and there's going to be phases where you're challenged and you're going to have doubts and it's going to be hard and you're going to be like, why is this happening to me?
Right.
What did I do to deserve this? And I don't think like you did something to deserve it. I think that this is just the path you need to be on in order to get where you were destined to go.
Yeah, it's life.
Exactly.
That's what happens. You learn and grow in different stages.
Exactly.
I agree.
So like it was right after high school, right before college. It was during this time where I was like, I really want a significant other, like a girlfriend and wife. And I started to pursue relationships with people in not very healthy ways and not in the best of ways. You know, my generation, there's definitely like all the mobile applications that are out there.
Dude.
And I'm not saying like I was like the worst person out there.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not like, I wasn't swiping I don't even know what direction it is. Like I wasn't swiping right for everybody.
Right.
Like that wasn't me. But it was still not healthy.
Yeah. Dude, so I have to say this. I do not understand. I cannot imagine being your generation. I just don't get dating in the 21st century. That would be like, so weird. It's not even, I mean, it's probably better than having, rejection at a bar. To just have the like hidden rejection of somebody swiping a direction. But it just seems astounding to me that people do this and they live this way. It probably just means I'm old. That's what that means. But
no, I don't think that's like what you're saying makes total sense to me. It's weird. It's confusing.
Yeah.
Like what a relationship is supposed to be two people getting to understand each other better and developing feelings around about that relationship. And you have like all these different applications and stuff where they're very much designed to be like visual. And it's like I think it's terrible in many ways because it's designed to be visual. They're telling you that looks are more important than what's on the inside of somebody. And so like even if that's not the type of person you are, like I'm not a looks person. I can get past looks with people. But those kinds of apps still prime you to think like that, even if the type of person you are.
Well, and it's setting that as the foundation of your relationship, right? So
exactly.
I've never been on one of those apps, but I'm assuming that you don't sit there and read through a whole profile. You're looking at she's only half dressed. That sounds good, or whatever.
Even if you do look at their profiles, like I was someone that would read profiles, right?
Okay.
It's like half a paragraph. How can you know anything about someone in half a paragraph?
3 sentences.
It's not possible.
Right. I like cats and long walks on the beach, and
I like long walks on the beach are great. Awesome. I'm swiping whatever direction for that. That's as deep as it gets from there.
Interesting. Okay. So thank you for that little excursion. It's just, it blows my mind. I cannot imagine these poor young people. So I don't know. I hope my kids never have to do that. But
it's hard.
It is definitely strange. It's weird, the world we live in.
The second problem with it, sorry,
Go ahead.
I want to stick on this just for another second.
Yeah.
Is that it is designed to take you away from human interaction.
Yeah.
Right? It falls into like the texting and messaging where we have a whole generation of people who are afraid to get on the phone.
Right.
And I was that person at one point. I like my first job, I was doing calls, right? I was doing collections. And so, I've got over it because I needed to for my job. But like most people in my generation, they don't have that, right? They're so used to texting and messaging that like making a call is foreign. And it's strange, and they don't know how to do it. And they get face to face with someone, and they don't know, like, how do I have a conversation with you? Because when you get a text, you can choose to answer it right away. You can wait for a little while. You can formulate new questions. Like when you're face to face, you don't have that as an option, really. And I think it does us a huge disservice, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's interesting the way technology is affecting us. Okay, so you're going through all that.
Yeah.
And you're kind of navigating it relationally. What?
Trying to.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. Oh, it blows my mind. But so how does that affect you, or how does that change your development?
The way it affected me was I was seeking something outside of myself to basically give myself how do I say this? To put value on myself, right? Seeking a relationship to give me value of myself.
Yeah, validation.
Exactly, which it can't do, right? And that's what I discovered. But in the middle of it, it was awful because you're like, I want to be in a relationship because I feel like that'll give me value. And you get into a relationship and the relationship isn't great. And then it makes you feel like, oh, well, my value must not be great. And then you're like, God, just put someone in my life, right?
Yeah.
And then another relationship comes up and you're like, oh, I hope this is going to work. And then it doesn't work out. And you're like, wow, I must be crappy or something. And like that's not the truth of it. Right. That's just the preconceived ideas we're giving ourselves based on where we're putting the value.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So we've established it's a weird world we live in, and it doesn't necessarily help with identity, which I think is one of the key things. I think a big part of being a believer, living our life with God, is learning who we are and learning our value and living into who he's made us to be.
Definitely.
Okay, so you're wrestling with this. You're trying to find, a woman. I'm curious because I'm sure some of that comes from even that abandonment that you had, as a kid. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have thought of it that way, but I'm sure you're right about that too. Like that, logically, that makes perfect sense to me.
Right. I'm no psychologist. Just I play one on a podcast.
Subscript: we don't give out any medical advice in the show. Please don't take us on any medical advice we may say. Yeah, this is not okay. We're not doctors here.
That's funny. I used to have to do those kind of things. Like I worked at a brokerage firm,
Yeah.
And so I would have to say very explicitly, look, I'm not a broker. You don't want my advice. Like that's, you don't want that. So, okay. So you're going through this with the,
Yes.
with the relationship, looking for relationships, but then you're also trying to, where are you going? How are you growing through that? Take us to that next stage.
So also within this time, like this same time period, I start to go to college, and I go to a Catholic college. I choose a Catholic college, not because it's a Catholic college and not because of the degree I'm going to be able to get there, but I chose it because they recruited me to play NCAA Division III lacrosse.
Oh, cool. Again,
apparently I have like a streak of choosing things, not for the best of reasons, but somehow it works out for me.
Yeah. Nice.
So I go to this college, and this is like the first time I start understanding theological debate. Right.
Oh yeah.
And like getting different theological perspectives, because it's a Catholic school and you have to go through all, it was liberal arts school. So I had to take all the different subjects. So I took English classes, I took math classes, I took French classes, I took theology classes, I took philosophy classes. So I've got all these different things on. And so I'm learning about God and faith in a completely different perspective from what I'm used to. And I've been to Catholic churches before, but going to a Catholic church is very different than learning about Catholicism from a theological standpoint, and learning about all the different splits from the Catholic Church and all these different things. It's a completely different experience of learning.
Oh yeah, totally.
So I'm trying to just wrap my mind around that. This is a thing. Like there's all these different Christian faiths that are battling against each other over the one truth, right? And they're saying like this one is, no, I'm completely correct. No, I'm completely correct. And it's like that. It was mind numbing and weird to me, and it was challenging to me, because like when I think of Christianity, I think like one whole. We're all in God. And like even when I look at the different religions in the world right now, like to me personally, like I see people who are Jewish as my brothers and sisters in faith because they have the same God. Muslims have basically the same God, right? They say Allah, but we're all brothers and sisters in faith. Basically, we come from the same tradition. Why are we like battling each other and killing each other over this? I understand wanting to get to the truth. Like, why are we killing each other over this? This was weird to me, and I didn't understand it.
Yeah. Well, so I think you have to. There's obviously thousands of years of history there in all of that. I think part of the difficult thing, what really breaks my heart is that we have, as believers, as Christians, we absolutely must have a view of other human beings as being made in God's image, and therefore having value, and therefore being our brother. And so whether, I think religiously, whether I think a Muslim person has it right or wrong, or I think that another denomination has it right or wrong, it doesn't actually matter in the end. Like truth matters. I'm gonna affirm that, because otherwise I'll get emails and people will tell me that that's not, or bad reviews or something. And I believe that, I do. But I think if I believe really what God has said, it's all people. We're all in the same human boat, right? And so we all must love each other. And as a Christian, I think it's our responsibility to take the lead on that and to go out and love.
I'm 100% on board with you. And I think it's good to pursue truth. I think we should look for truth in our own life and to better understand it all. But at the end of the day, we don't determine what truth is. Like, God determines what the truth
right.
is. We're just living in the world he created, right?
Right. Amen.
Who am I? Who am I to say that no, your interpretation is wrong, my interpretation is the only correct thing?
Right.
That no, God's interpretation is the only correct thing. This is what I think, this is what I believe based on the limited perspective that I have. But for me to attack someone like that seems rude to me.
Well, it is. And that's definitely a generational thing, because certainly generations like the boomers before us and then going back further were very much still in that sort of enlightenment, right and wrong, clear, black and white kind of thing. And I know that Gen Xers like me are much more, maybe a little more gray, but it really did change in the last 50 years. And that's hard to believe. It's like, it's a seismic shift.
Definitely.
And yet,
which is good in some ways, but it poses other problems.
It does. And that's part of the issue. So you're learning about theology, which is interesting. Yeah. So you had to study like Augustine and Aquinas and Jerome and some of those guys. Yeah. Dante.
Absolutely. And like saints, like I'd never really heard of saints.
Yeah.
And it was like this really foreign someone said like, hey, you remind me a lot of St. Francis of Assisi. And I was like, who? Like,
why are you calling me a sissy, man? What's up with that?
Basically, no, I didn't say that. But they're like, yeah, no, it's like this person, and they're a saint. I'm like, what's a saint?
Yeah.
I didn't know what a saint was. And like after they explained what a saint was and kind of like showed me the ropes of what sainthood is, I was all like, this is really interesting. And it's actually really cool because they're basically people who were faulty people who were just doing their best to try and live in God's will. And they did pretty well with it. And like, they're not perfect, right? Like Jesus was perfect because he is God. He like perfection. You
right.
And like, sometimes it's hard to like live up to perfection. Right. But then you have examples
all the time.
Right.
Yes,
exactly. You're like, dang it, I did it again. Like, sheesh. Why do I keep doing that? Right.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But like, you have these examples of people who've like done really well, not perfect, mind you, but they've done really well. And that was like a really awesome concept to me. You had these other people you could look up to.
Right. Yeah. You had some virtual mentors, if you will, right? People that you could look at, man.
Exactly.
I'm a huge believer in looking at the lives of the saints. Did you know Ignatius of Loyola, who's one of the guys that I really respect? He got hurt in battle when the Moors were attacking Spain, but he spent a bunch of time in bed, and he passed the time by reading the New Testament and or a life of Christ that was not the New Testament, and then lives of the saints. And that was what really brought him to Christ. And then he was also reading like trashy romance novels, and he was noticing the difference between them, and he was like, maybe this is better.
Like, yeah, this trashy romance stuff, it's got its qualities, I guess, but like these saints, that's where it's at.
And we're back to Tinder. Okay. So
oh my goodness, the odd connections we're making. This is
what I do, brother. So anyway, take us. So you're learning this stuff, but how did that shape you? So it sounds like in some ways it gave you some people to look up to that maybe you didn't have as a kid.
Definitely. That's definitely a portion of it. And one of the most interesting things, two of the most interesting things I learned is from the life of St. Francis of Assisi. So it was really cool that the person who brought that up to me. Because there were two things he taught that really impacted me within my Christian faith. One was he had this concept that you can walk in prayer, right? Every moment of every day you can be in prayer. And like growing up, that was not something I learned. Praying was folding your hands and bowing down, and like you're talking to God, saying specific things, and like and some people teach it to where it's like you're basically just asking him. It's like a wish list, like, hey God, please just give this to me.
That's how I grew up. It was intercessory grocery list prayer.
Exactly. Like a lot of people grow up like that, and like yep. I'm no different from that. And so like I learned like, no, everything I do can be done in prayer. Like literally just walking or waving at somebody can be done in prayer. And so you can be in prayer all the time. That was such a cool concept to me.
Yeah. So learning really to cultivate an attitude of prayer all the time.
Definitely. And the other thing was during his one of the things that Saint Francis of Assisi really wanted to do in his life, and it's funny because it never actually happened. He wanted to be a martyr. Like that was like his like number one goal was like he wanted to be a martyr.
Weirdo.
He tried like, hey, that was like his goal. And like he tried his darndest. Like he tried to go to the Holy Land 3 times. He failed his first 2 times. Like he just couldn't get there. The 3rd time he gets there, right? He's preaching in the streets and everything, and the Sultan takes him into his castle at that time, right? And basically Saint Francis is basically trying to do everything to get martyred, right? He's with the Sultan for about 2 weeks, and he comes out alive, not a martyr, and only the Franciscan monks during that time, they were the only Christians are allowed in the Holy Land. Like, not only did he not become a martyr, but like he still furthered God's plan there.
Wow.
And basically the Sultan allowed him there because the Sultan saw him as a brethren in faith, right? And so it's like we can be brothers without being Christians.
Yeah.
We can be brothers across any faith.
Yeah.
I thought that was that truly has shaped me as well.
Yeah, really interesting. Oh, okay. So that's around in the 1200s. It was during the Crusades. There was a lot going on there. So there's there's a great book on the Crusades, and I'll find the link. I don't think I have it in my office. I'm looking, but I'll find a link to it that I read in seminary. You guys can check it out if you really are interested in that. I like that. Okay.
So from here, this is kind of the next thing that happened. So I'm going through college, and I'm feeling really lonely at this time. And I would go to a party and I would drink at the parties, hoping to get like liquid courage to go meet a girl, right? And talk to them, because I've grown up in this generation where we don't know how to talk to people, right? And so like I would drink to try and gain courage, but then like I have a high alcohol tolerance, and so I wouldn't get drunk. Like I usually get sick before I get drunk.
Oh no.
So, yeah.
That's not good, man.
So like I would drink to try and gain courage, but then I wouldn't get drunk to have that, this liquid courage that doesn't actually exist.
Right.
It's a whole different problem, right? Like that doesn't exist. So don't try and do it. But anyways, I wouldn't get that, but alcohol is a depressant anyway. So like I would like feel even more discouraged afterwards because I didn't have that courage. And like this went on for a while. And I remember one night I went to a party. The same thing happened again. And I left, right? And I was just like in this terrible dismay. Like I was just like super upset. And I went out into the woods near my university. And I remember I sat down, and I was there for a couple hours. Just like, God, give me something, right? Like give me something that I know that you're here, that I know that you're guiding me somewhere, that I know I'm going to find love in my life, and something to that effect, right? And I was about to give up. I had been sitting there for hours. I stood up, just ready to take off because nothing happened, and I was just even more upset. And I remember right at that point, like right as I was about to give up, I saw a coyote, like popped up out of nowhere. There's this coyote there. And I looked at the coyote, and I had this compulsion. Like, I need to follow this coyote. It's a wild animal, right? Like, who thinks like I got to follow the wild animal?
Be careful, Cody. Be careful.
Exactly. But like that's what I was like. I felt like this is what I needed to do. So I started to follow this coyote, and he started to speed up, and all of a sudden he just disappeared out of the blue, and I can't see him anywhere. But I'm at a road that I've never been at before, and so I'm like, I'm going to follow this road and see where it goes, because I felt like I should follow this coyote, and this is where the coyote took me. So I'm going to see where this road goes. And I go down this road, and at the end of this road, no joke, there's a statue of Jesus there.
Wow.
It's like to me, like that was a sign, like something's going to happen. And I felt like God used the coyote to speak to me in a way that would make sense of something to me.
Yeah.
Now during this time, I'm also interested in other religions, not necessarily to follow those religions, but just because I'm a very curious person and I want to know different things. And Native American mythology was just something that I was interested in. And so, like, the character of Coyote in Native American mythology has multiple roles. One of the roles is creator. In some of the Native American mythologies, the coyote is who created all of the existence, basically.
That's interesting.
In other Native American mythologies, he's the destroyer, right? And in other Native American mythologies, he's there's kind of two ways to look at this, but like he's the trickster and or he's the happy-go-lucky kind of character, right?
Yes,
Basically,
Wile E. Coyote.
What happens in most of Coyote stories is Coyote decides to do something, he does it, it goes terribly wrong, and he learns from it. And basically, that is what was about to happen in my life. I didn't know it when this happened, but in hindsight, everything's 2020. And this is what was about to happen. I was about to go pursue something. It was going to end terribly, and I would learn something from it.
Wow. Okay, tell us that story.
So about 2 weeks after that, I meet a girl, and we start dating, right? And like when I first met her, there's this guy who's like my best friend at that time, right? And he's all like, I'm going to start dating her. I'm like, okay, whatever. And then like her and I started talking and we were hitting things off. And he was all like, you know what? You seem to be hitting it off. You go for her. Right. So we start dating and we're dating for a good period of time. And I believe that she's going to be the one. And so I proposed to her and she says yes. And it was basically at that point where things started to go really wrong in the relationship. We would get in these like fights and we would have these periods where like she would be upset and she wouldn't talk to me. And I'm just trying to figure out what's going wrong and she won't tell me. And like a lot of this stuff is going on at this time. And I hadn't met her family yet. So when we were, I met her family and I thought everything was great. Right. I thought like I hit it off with all the parents, all the siblings, all the relatives, like things seemed great.
Yeah.
Then we're on our way to go meet my family because she'd met my mom and my stepdad, but she hadn't met like the rest of my family who still lives in Colorado. And we're on our way to go meet them. And she ends our engagement.
Wow.
And like, she won't tell me why. And I'm like, what is going on? Right?
Yeah.
We come back to school because we're still in college at this point. And 2 weeks after we get to school, she breaks off. She breaks up with me completely. And I'm devastated at this point. I'm like, what is going on? Like, I thought things were going to be like good forever. And I thought, I found a good Christian woman and things went well with your parents. Like, what's going on? About a week after that, I find out that she's started to date the person I thought was my best friend.
Oh, no.
Who's also my roommate.
Yeah. Oh, that's awkward.
It's super awkward. And I had secluded myself a ton at this point. And so I didn't have a lot of friends. There were a lot of people I was friendly, but I didn't really have good friends. He was my only good friend. She was my only good friend. Right? Like really good friend.
Yeah.
And so like my entire support was gone. I went into this major depression at that point. I I saw a future ahead of me and it was ripped out from me. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And I remember multiple times during this period where we lived on the 3rd floor. And when I look out the window, I can see below us there's concrete 3 stories down. And I remember multiple times just looking out the window and thinking, if I just went out the window head first, it'd all be over. That's simple.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Like, game over. It's done. I remember so many times thinking that. And I never did that. But it was an awful feeling during that time.
Yeah, well, obviously, I mean, that sounds like a very hard season. Where did you think God was during that time?
I always felt like God was there, but from the time I saw that coyote until that point, I felt like I wasn't getting anything from him. I felt like there was a disconnection, and I couldn't figure out why there was a disconnection, right? Because I wanted there to be that relationship with God, and I wanted to be close, but I felt like he wasn't talking to me.
Yeah.
And during this time now, I started to really seek him more. I started to go to church more often. I would read more about faith, and I sought new friendships with people who were better Christians than I was, because I needed a new support system.
Yeah,
because I didn't have that there, and I was so blessed because there were a few individuals during that time who really stepped up, and they've been some of my best friends in the world. And I'm so thankful they were there during that time, because they helped me so much. It's like, people aren't designed to be alone. We're not designed to be alone. We're designed for community. We're designed to be with other people.
Yeah.
And when you don't have that, it's painful. But when you have that, you can overcome anything. And so it was people like that in my life who helped me overcome. And it was seeking God out more strongly myself. It was in doing that I discovered my own value. And when I looked in hindsight back into the relationship, and mind you, this didn't happen right away. It's not like I this is like months and months and months of feeling like this.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, looking back, what I realized is and to this day, I'm someone who has huge dreams. I want to accomplish things. I want to go out in the world. I want to do crazy, awesome things. And like, I want to help tons of people, right? Like, that's what I want to do. And she wasn't like that. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? She had her family owned a business at home. It was a small town, and she wanted to like take that over and like do good work there, right? That's where she was being called.
Yeah.
And it's not where I was being called. And in trying to make the relationship work, I gave up on a lot of my own dreams. I gave up on a lot of ideas of what I wanted in my life prior to that. And so if that relationship had gone on, I realize now that I wouldn't have been a happy person, because that's not who I was. And so in seeking God, I really learned how to value myself and appreciate who I am, who is Cody. That's what I was really delving into, and that's what God helped me see during that time. Because I went through a long period of time where I tried to find value in others.
Right.
This was the first time where I found value in myself.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't need others to tell me what my value was.
Oh, I love that insight, because I think that is so important. You are more valuable than you think, right? And you are valuable just because you are, and not because of your
infinitely valuable.
Right.
It's not that you're just valuable. You are infinitely valuable for who you are. And like sure, we're not perfect. we're human beings. We're not perfect.
Right.
We're going to make mistakes, but that doesn't mean you're not valuable.
Right. But you don't have to be perfect to be loved.
Exactly.
And what it sounds like was happening maybe in the relationship was you felt like you had to be in some ways, and you were trying to fill something. And so you found your own intrinsic value with the Lord after going through that situation.
Exactly.
Wow. What a great story, man. I love that. I'm sure it sucked at the time. I know it was hard. I don't mean to diminish that, but
during that time.
Yeah.
And I even today, there are parts of me that still feel hurt. Right.
Sure. Of course.
I'm over it. It's not a problem. Right. But like sometimes things shouldn't happen to people, and they do happen
right.
to people. Right. And that doesn't make it right. That's just how things happen sometimes.
Right.
And I realized for me, that was what had to happen, right? I had to have the trick of a relationship that was going to go on to be something more in order to learn that relationship didn't need to define me or any relationship other than my relationship with God.
Yeah. Okay, so take us from there up into kind of your leadership coaching and how that all came about, because I know that you're passionate about that, and I want to talk about that.
Right after this time, but basically during that same period, I was still in college, and I started off college as a psychology major because I wanted to go into counseling psychology. Now, I didn't stay a psychology major because their psychology program at the university I went to wasn't designed for counseling psychology. It was designed more for like scientific study psychology, which is an amazing field. I love learning about all the things they're doing with that. I didn't want to do it myself, though.
Yeah.
It just wasn't me.
A little different.
Exactly. And so like there are all these different majors I could go do, and I didn't know what I was going to do, and I didn't know where I was going to be going either. And so I basically decided on a business major because I figured at the very least, no one's going to question me about it. Because the first thing that happens when you have a philosophy major, an English major, maybe even a theology major, right?
Yep.
They're like, what are you going to do with that degree? First question every time without fail.
Yes, you're right. As a guy who got a degree in biblical studies, I can vouch for that.
And so I was just like, I don't want to deal with that, right? No one's going to question a business degree.
They're going to assume you're going to go into business.
Oh, you're going to do something with business. That makes sense. So like it was practical more than anything. And in my studies, I found I was pretty good at accounting. Right. Which, like, if you think about it, this is like a complete 180, right? Like I go to college thinking I'm going to go into counseling psychology, and I come out doing accounting.
Yeah.
Like how did this work out? So I got out of college. I started doing work in accounting. Like immediately, I hated it.
I suspected that was going to be the case because number one is boring. And number two, you're just a little more creative than that.
Yeah, to say the least. And I'm a people person. I like to be around people. And like accounting people in general, they're mostly to themselves, and they're to the books, and that's fantastic. Those people are amazing. It's just not me.
Right. Okay.
And so like at that point, like I was like, okay, I'm doing this now because I need to pay for all this college debt I have because I went to a private school. I didn't have any sort of scholarship because I'm a white guy, right? There's no scholarships for us anywhere. Like I didn't. We're NCAA Division III, so they're not allowed to give scholarships. So I didn't even get a scholarship for that.
Wow.
So I've got like a ton of student debt. So I'm like, I got to do something, and I don't want to go back to school because if I go back to school, that debt's just going to pile up even more. And if I don't know what I'm going to do with whatever I go back to school with, what's the point anyways?
Right.
And so it was around this time where I got introduced to a group of entrepreneurs, and they were like, hey, you need to get into personal development. And I'm like, personal development? Like my notion of personal development was that is what people who feel like they have no future do, who feel like they're like the world's going to end. That's what they need. That's not me. I'm not that guy. Right. And like I was a moron to say the least, because because they kept saying like, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. I was like, okay, fine, I'll read a book, I'll make you happy, right? And I start reading these personal development books, and I'm flabbergasted because there's so much information in these books that should be taught, which I didn't have any teaching on at any point in my education. And I'm like at first I was angry because I'm like, why did I go through all that education and not learn any of these skills? Like none of them.
Right.
And then
I know.
quickly got over the anger because it's not worth it being angry when you can't do anything about it.
Right.
I fell in love with personal development. I just dove into everything personal development. And I started to learn about John Maxwell. And John Maxwell, he's been teaching leadership for over 40 years within the personal development world. He actually started off as a pastor, extremely successful pastor. And he felt like his calling was to teach leadership in the secular world instead of teaching in the religious world. And so he made that transition, and he's phenomenal, like tons of books. He's written over 100 books. Some of them, like I think 5 of them have each sold over 1 million copies, which is very rare for one book to sell over 1 million copies, let alone 5 books. So like, he knows what he's talking about. And I really just loved his work. And I'm like, I want more John Maxwell all around me. Like where can I get more John Maxwell? And it wasn't too long after that where I found out that he has what's called the John Maxwell team, which is basically a group of coaches, speakers, and teachers that all teach on leadership. And I'm like, a coach? Like, what's a coach? Like, I know what a sports coach is, right? I've done sports since I was little. Like, I know what that is, but like a business coach, a leadership coach, like, what is this? How does this work? And I started to learn about like, what is the process of coaching? And like, I had this realization that like, this is just who I am. Like the skills they're talking about, how they function in the world. That's just who I was. Like, I was the kind of person when people had things going on in their life, they came to me to seek that advice, to help them get through, to help them get to the next point where they wanted to get to, how to get past the trip ups. I was always that guy that they always came to. And I was like, wait, hold on. I can get paid to do this?
Right.
Like people do this. They come to me just as is already. I can get paid to do it. Sign me up. Right. And so basically, I got certified with the John Maxwell team, and I've been developing more and more since then. I've been certified with multiple organizations since then, and I'm not going to go through it all.
Sure.
You can find that stuff elsewhere and ask me about it. But yeah, no, that's basically where it started. And along with this, right, the other thing that I noticed, the other reason why I'm passionate about leadership as opposed to the plethora of other things that I could be passionate about, is because when I look into the world, I see so many problems around leadership. And it doesn't matter which world we're talking about, right? At home, I experienced it because I didn't have a father growing up, right?
Yeah.
That leadership position wasn't there for me. When I looked at politics, I saw terrible leader after terrible leader after terrible leader. And I don't care which side of the fence you live on. There's terrible leaders on all the fences, right? And like it impacts us when that happens. I looked at the business world, CEOs, C-suite people, managers who did these awful, terrible things and left people without jobs, who cast them out and did, all these terrible things that shouldn't happen to people. I looked in the world of religion. Sadly, within the world of religion, there's a lot of bad leaders who've done atrocious things. And it saddened me. And what I saw in my mind was a generation of people coming up who are seeing all these bad examples of leadership, who are seeing all the atrocious things around leadership, and who are finding leadership in the wrong places. And I didn't want them to see that. I wanted them to see, what does a good leader look like? I wanted them to have hope that things could get better. I wanted them to believe that the world can become something greater if we work towards it today, that it's not all downhill from here, that we can make something better if we work towards it. That's why I got so passionate about leadership, is because there's this whole generation that have no clue what leadership is supposed to look like.
Yeah, I'm thinking that goes back to our conversation about relationships, right? And talking about, because we don't even have that. Like, we live in a society where we don't even have those basic relationships. And so it's interesting the way that technology has taken out some of the basic human connections. So leadership, absolutely needs to happen. And I love that. And so you do coaching and you do workshops and you do speaking.
Absolutely, yeah. I actually, tomorrow, I know this isn't going to go live at some other point. I know it's not actually going to go live tomorrow, but tomorrow I actually have a summit that I'm about to do. It's going to be 15 speakers, so I'm super excited.
Very cool.
About that. But by the time this goes live, no one's it's going to be gone and past, but that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Very cool. Well, awesome. So if people want to connect with you, the best way to do that is at theleadership.guide, right?
Yes. And there's no .com, there's no .org after that. It's theleadership.guide.
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 Yep.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Very good. Well, Cody, I appreciate you being here to just share some of your story and some of your passion. And you had a couple of great stories that I think that was awesome. So thanks for sharing those. Thanks for listening again. I love that.
Definitely. Of course. You are consistently one of the top podcasts I listen to. And every single week you've got another phenomenal person that's going to be on. I'm honored that you're allowing me to be one of those people. I hope I have half the impact some of your other guests have had.
Well, it means a lot to me. And so thanks for doing it. Hey, anything you want to leave us with as we close out here?
The one thing I would leave with people is it okay if I do two things?
Yeah, you can do as much as you want. It's podcasting. Okay. That's the beauty of it.
Two things that I would leave with people. One, bad things are going to happen. That doesn't mean God isn't there. And that doesn't mean that he's not going to use it for some good purpose. You may not see what it is right now, and it may be really difficult to hear it right now. But there is something good that's going to come from whatever terrible things are going on right now. God is there. And the other thing that I would leave with people is that God's going to speak to you in a way that you're going to understand it, in a way that's meaningful to you. He may not use words, he may not use dreams, he may not use compulsions, but he's going to use something that will speak to you.
Amen. I love that. And I think it behooves all of us to just always be listening. Always be listening. Keep the ears in your heart, if you will, open. Keep that open so you can hear where he's leading you. Obviously, we always look to Scripture, but he's also speaking to us every single day. If we'll just have an open mind and heart. Well, Cody, again, thank you for being here. I appreciate it, brother.